All right. So remember, this stinking Mr. Radford just left him in the dust. And we're really, really sad about that, right? Because now these kids are just on their own. And remember, JJ's in like denial. He's like, nah, this is all fake. Life's fine. And he's 10. And the other 5 are like, what are we doing? So, guess we're going to see where we're going. Chapter 13, Monday, July 17th. 14:40 hours. So that is 2 in the afternoon, 2:40 in the afternoon. It was fairly easy to raise the foresails and get the Phoenix moving again. But as to whether or not it was the right direction, that was anybody's guess. Radford had given their last position as east-northeast of Guam. Even though they had drifted a lot since that reading, they were following the compass south or west-southwest. It seemed the only course. I don't know, Luke said uneasily. We're probably wasting our time. We could be getting even more lost than before. In a crisis, lectured Ian, it's always best to keep busy to prevent the onset of panic. Luke stared at the boy, who spoke so seldom that they often had to remind themselves he was aboard. Since when did you become the ship's counselor? Ian flushed. I saw it in a documentary once. Luke sighed. Ian, did anyone ever tell you watch too much TV? My parents, Ian nodded, right before they put me on this trip. So remember, Ian is only on this trip because he watched too much TV. So now he might die just because he watched too much TV. Because remember, they are lost in the middle of the stinking ocean with no adults. Luke sent Ian below to the navigation room to see if he could find any maps, charts. The captain had always called them. In open ocean, there were no landmarks, but it might be helpful to know the course the Phoenix had been following before disaster struck. He watched the younger boy's careful footsteps. The schooner's deck was sloped dangerously down towards the bow. This was because both pumps were working in the engine room near the stern. For the time being, anyways, they were letting the forward compartments fill up with water. It was a big risk, no question about it. If the Phoenix got too far out of balance, Luke reflected it could take a diagonal dive down just like the Titanic. So right now, the boat isn't even like this. It's like tilting because it's taking on a lot of water. So,
the boy that just watched a lot of TV could have just got grounded.
I know, right? So this poor guy, I mean, we don't really know how much TV, but this poor guy, man, I feel bad for him, okay?
He could have just got grounded and, that's it. You don't got sent off to a death ship.
Well, they didn't know that. It was going to be a death ship, remember?
Yeah, they didn't know that, but still.
But tough times called for tough choices. They needed the engine, and Liza couldn't fix it if the thing was underwater. Luke looked up, squinting in the sunlight. He could barely make out Charla perched atop the foremast. She was scanning the horizon for signs of other ships, ready to fire off disaster flares if she spotted anything. Distress flares if she spotted anything. The job had fallen to her mostly because she was the only one with the guts to climb the rat lines. Her and JJ. But Luke doubted JJ, the daredevil, would be interested unless there was a reasonable chance of killing himself. And besides, the actor's son was boycotting the effort to be rescued, still convinced their current prevail was part of the CNC's plan. Liza had already started taking apart the motor, even though the engine room was still 2 feet underwater. She was working by snorkel mask. Every few minutes, she would surface like a submarine, and another wet part would hit the drying towel like a dull clink. Will's official job was pumper, but he doubled as a nervous nag. You remember where that piece goes, right? He cublets down the open hatch. You know how to put it back together, right? No, she said sarcastically. I'm busting it up just to get you killed. Will couldn't decide what made him more uneasy, the current danger or the fact that Liza was emerging as the big hero. Ian came running up the companionway, waving a thick folder with the CNC's logo on the cover. You found the maps? Luke asked. Ian shook his head. Files. Files? Luke repeated. On us. Luke gave Ian the wheel and fished through his own folder. Now that he thought about it, of course, charting a new course would need information on its charges. Still, it was eerie to see his whole life between the covers, almost like the FBI was keeping tabs on him. But this stuff must have come from his parents. There were school pictures and report cards, medical records. It said he'd been allergic to milk as a baby. Was that true? No one had ever mentioned anything to him about it. All of the court documents were there, along with the arrest report and the suspension papers from school. And what was this? Luke recognized his mother's handwriting on the letter. Okay, so this is his, like, he's going to be reading what his mother said. Luke is a good boy, but lately he's been running with a tough crowd, including a boy named Reese, who has been trouble with the law before. We want to believe him when he says that gun wasn't his, but we don't want to be naive either. Not where Luke's future is concerned. We can't take that chances that Reese has gotten him involved with the gang. We think it might be a great idea to get him away from here for a while. Therefore, we're accepting the court's proposal to send him to you. Luke put the letter down, blinked hard. They said they believed me. By this time, all pumping work stopped for the crew members to dig into their files. Liza emerged from the engine room, and Charla abandoned her lookout post to join them. Even JJ interrupted his tanning to flip quickly through his folder. He was unimpressed. Big deal. So I'm a flake. What news? What else is new? He peered over Ian's shoulder. Couch potato, no friends. What a surprise. Lay off, Luke warned. But JJ had already moved on to Will and Liza. Woo! What are you guys, hitmen? There isn't this much violence in a James Bond movie, Will flushed. I don't know how it happens. 1 minute we're arguing, Liza cut him off. Shut up, Will. We don't have to explain anything. Mind your own business, rich boy. JJ shrugged. I don't see any of you guys in the poorhouse. ENC doesn't come cheap, you know. You find the money, Luke put it in grimly. When your two choices are either here or jail, or you borrow one, Charla added bitterly. Not all of us, or you borrow it, Charla added bitterly. Not all of us live in Beverly Hills. She reacted like a wildcat. Oh, wait. Blah. Yeah? What's your story? Asked JJ, snatching the folder from her hands. She reacted like a wildcat. Give that back. JJ held the file up out of her reach and kept on reading over his head. Charlotte leaped like a basketball player, grabbed the papers from him, and fixed him with a withering glare. Moron, she muttered. He looked bewildered. What'd I do? That's private, she raged. You know what it says? That you're world class at like 15 sports with a deep, dark secret. My own father sends me halfway around the world just so he won't have to look at me, but you don't want anyone to find out you're a star? You didn't get to the part where it says what a head case I am, she mumbled. We're all head cases, JJ told her. This is a trip for head cases. That's why we're here. Liza pushed her snorkel mask back down over her face. Well, this was fun. She stepped back into the engine room. JJ regarded the pile of folders. What are we going to do with these? JJ glared at him. You really want to hear my suggestion? JJ picked up the folders, walking to the gun wall. With an extravagant wind-up of a major league pitcher, he flung them into the seat. How's the environment now? He asked Charla. It'll live, she replied, tight-lipped. Well, let's get back to work, said JJ. Luke raised an eyebrow. Look who's admitting that we might be in trouble. I'm bored, that's all, JJ insisted. Gotta have something to do in these when the cavalry arrives. Which pump is mine? All right, so apparently JJ's had a small change of heart, and he's like, yeah, I'll help, whatever, it's fine. You know, I don't want to look like I'm doing nothing. Chapter 14, Monday, July 17th to 1640. So now it's, instead of 4 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock. So it's just a few hours later. As the day wore on, Luke watched the bow of the Phoenix sink lower and lower into the sea. At least a dozen times, he was tempted to send the pumpers forward to try to even out the schooner's balance. No, if they had a chance, it was with the motor. They had to pump out the engine room first. It was an agonizing decision. If they took a nosedive to the bottom, it would be all his fault. Even in a glassy calm, sleepy waves broke over the gull well. The pump puddled for only a moment before rolling down a deck that was sloped like a parking ramp. If another storm blew through, the Phoenix wouldn't last 5 minutes. In the crew cabins, even the upper bunks were swamped now. Where the crew members were supposed to sleep was anybody's guess. Probably they wouldn't sleep anymore. Luke thought back to the night before, crammed next to JJ in the narrow berth. That misery might go down as his final night of sleep ever. The thought coaxed his nervous chuckle from him. But beneath the surface lingered a feeling so awful he didn't dare dwell on it. By 5 o'clock, the entire engine was spread across 2 beach towels in the stern. Will surveyed the scene with a frown. I hope you can look at this stuff and see a motor, because all I see is a huge pile of junk. Liza looked preoccupied. I've got it straight in my mind. Don't bug me. It took another hour to get the last few inches of thick, murky slime off the floor of the engine room. Then Liza eased herself down the hatch to start the long task of reassembly. The pumpers rushed forward to work on the crew cabins and the forelocks, the area below decks directly under the bow. They were exhausted, but there was no time for a break. As Luke put it, their next break could be spent on the ocean floor. So he's saying, like, we can't stop. If we stop, we might as well, we'll be dying. We can't just stop. The sun was setting when Will stepped into the cockpit and joined Luke at the wheel. He checked their directions. He checked their directions. Still west-southwest. How do we know that's right? He asked uneasy. Maybe the compass is broken like everything else in this tub. Luke shrugged. You can't be off course when you don't know where you're going in the first place. He regarded the foresail. Wind's picking up. We should probably let out the sheet a little. Will groaned. If you're turning into a real sailor, I'm going to have to start treating you like Radford. Luke shot Will a look. Don't mention that name. Not even as a joke. Will shook his head. How could anybody do what he did? I mean, we're talking about dying here. Are we so worthless to him? Luke looked at him sharply. We're not worthless. Ratface is worthless. If there's any justice in the world, he'll get his. Unless, Will frowned, you don't think JJ could be right. This is all part of CNC thing. It's pretty crazy, said Luke. They'd have to trash their own boat, wash the captain into the sea on purpose. Anything's possible, I guess. I'd love to believe that the captain's okay. Me too, Will agreed. That's probably what's in JJ's head. He feels responsible. He is responsible, Luke said flatly. He was born with a dream life. He gets whatever he wants whenever he wants it, and he's still the biggest screw-up I've ever met. Liza heaved herself through the engine room hatch, dusting ineffectively at the cake muck on her knees. Will looked at his sister, anxious but couldn't read her expression. Tell me the good news. It's back together, she replied. That's all I know for sure. The captain said never start the engine without the blower, Luke reminded her. The blower's electric, Eliza explained. If we run it before the electric's on, we could drain the charged battery. English, Liza, Will interrupted impatiently. We'll have to improvise. She picked up a grease-spattered beach towel that had been used to dry off the engine parts and tossed one to Luke and one to Will. When I give the word, you guys stand over the hatch and fan like crazy. Luke was amazed. And that's safe. She knows this stuff, Will said. She got an A on that science project. Liza replaced Luke at the wheel and waited for the two boys to establish themselves above the hatch. Okay, now. Like palace guards fanning a sultan, Luke and Will began waving their towels up and down, ventilating the engine room. Liza hit the starter button. The motor turned over, conked once, and died. Will cursed and threw his towel on the deck. Don't stop, she ordered briskly. They resumed fanning, and she tried again. This time the engine put-putted itself to light. All right, Liza, shouted Will. His sister looked at him sharply, but found no sarcasm in his praise. Cheering and applause came from the pumpers above the crew cabin. Charla flashed them thumbs up from her spot atop the foremast. Okay, explained Luke. Put her in gear. Liza pushed forward on the throttle, and the motor coughed and sputtered out. Oh, man, moaned Will. So the whole process began again. Luke and Will fanned when Liza tried to nurse the starter along. It's not easy, you know, Will protested as the motor roared to life, only to die with the wheeze and hiccup of machinery. It's murder on your shoulders. You're such a crab, Liza sneered. Luke rolled his eyes. What was with these two? They were on a sinking boat. This could be their last conversation. Why did they have to be fighting words? As they continued to work and bicker, Luke noticed an alarm on the roar of the motor was becoming less and less frequent. After the more minutes, the engine wouldn't even turn over. Will was worried too. Liza, I knew you'd bust it. Probably just flooded the carburetor, said Liza, grabbing the toolbox. I can smell the gas. Once again, she lowered herself into the engine hatch. What's the problem, Charlotte called. Luke could only shrug. You should come down. It's getting dark. Give me another half hour, came the reply. I can still see a little. After a few minutes, Liza emerged, reeking of fuel. I think I've got it this time. She climbed into the cockpit and reached for the starter. Luke and Will resumed fanning. My arm's falling off, Will complained. He only let go for a second to rest his aching shoulders, but at that moment, a gust of wind snatched the greasy terry cloth from his hand. The towel spread open like a full sail, floated down to the engine hatch. Hey, wait, Will began, but Liza's oil-stained fingers had already pressed the button. All right. Oh, these poor people. Okay, so Mrs. Kneifel knows what's going to happen next, and it's not good, okay? So they have to turn on the fan whenever they start like this engine thing, but there is no fan, so that's why they're fanning it. And now cloth has fallen into the engine room. Dun, 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 dun. While the thing is starting. So we'll see what's going to happen next. The spark of the starter ignited the trapped fumes in the engine room. It made a foom, like the lightning of propane on a barbecue, only a lot louder. This was followed by a split-second pause as the fire shot up the fuel lines to the Phoenix's 90-gallon gas tank. So now there's about to be a giant fire, okay? Get down, howled Liza, hurrying herself to the deck of the cockpit. A mammoth explosion rocked the schooner, and for a moment, dusk was as bright as day. Suddenly, the main cabin and galley were gone, replaced by a pillar of flame. The force of the blast threw Luke, Will, and Liza out over the transom clear into the sea. Luke tasted salt water for a moment and then resurfaced into the burning hailstorm. Bits of cabin, deck, and galley, all on fire, pelted down on him, forcing him to dive. The blazing cook stove of the Phoenix hit the waves right where he had been before. The blazing cook stove of the Phoenix hit the waves right where he had been a second before. Okay, so now there's a fire. Okay, so now the boat is on fire. So what are they even going to have left? I don't know. These poor children. Feel so bad for them. On the foredeck, the shockwave knocked JJ and Ian off their feet. When they recovered, they found themselves facing a wall of fire engulfed 2/3 of the boat. The extinguisher, cried Ian, reaching down the companionway and yanking the small tank from its mounting on the bulkhead. He pulled the pin and sprayed foam on the blaze. JJ picked up a bucket and began bailing water from the cabins and sloshing it in the firestorm. The heat was unbearable, and they stumbled on the ruins decks with the tangled of twisted planks and splinters. It's no use, bawled JJ. We might as well be throwing Dixie cups of Kool-Aid. The blast had knocked Charla out of her post atop the foremast, landing her upside down in the rat lines. It took every ounce of her gymnastics training to get herself right again. Through the waves of heat and smoke that billowed over her, she spotted JJ and Ian, and when she looked aloft, she saw only boiling orange ablaze. Where are the others? She called down. In the stern, shouted Ian. There is no stern. It's all fire back there. What a terrible creaking sound. The flames stomp the main staff toppled over in the shower of sparks. It crushed the cabin top, cutting the younger boy off from JJ. Ian, JJ cried. Ian jumped back, stumbling on an unpenned deck board. The extinguisher dropped from his hands, rolled into the fire, and exploded in a whoosh of compressed gas. Literally, these people cannot catch a break. The blaze mainstaff ignited the foresail. JJ sloshed water onto the smoldering sail, but flames quickly licked up the canvas, forcing Charla back atop the mast. The fire soon spread to the sheets and riggings. Ian, can you hear me? Called JJ. Get out of here, came Ian's voice from Infor. JJ spun around. Where to? There were only two choices. Either stay on a burning boat or take his chances in the vast, inhospitable, and terrifying sea. All right, so they've been one adult died, the other adult left them. They were going to get this boat started. Things were going to be fine. Okay, then the boat then a spark hit a towel, which then exploded the gas tank. So now half the boat is gone. 3 of them are in the ocean. Will and Liza and Luke. They're in the ocean. I'm literally in open ocean watching things burn. And the other 3 are on the boat about to be either burned alive or they're going to have to go in the sea. Literally, these people have like the worst life. But we are going to read 2 more chapters tomorrow. Thank you for joining. This will be posted, of course. And like I said, we're finishing this book Monday. So I'm real pumped. Thank you guys for joining. You're free to leave. Bye-bye. Ava, make sure you press the off button, please. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.